Hello, I'm Angela Princewill, and on this segment of Ask AP, the question I'm answering is I quit my job to start a new business, and my ex-spouse wants to impute income to me for underemployment. Can she do that? Yes. The short answer is yes. Yes, she can. She can successfully impute income to you if the circumstances are appropriate, right? So, under the guidelines, under the child support guidelines, it is appropriate in some circumstances if a person is underemployed. And well, there's a host of other factors or the times when a person may have income imputed to them. Under intentional underemployment or unemployment is a factor that would could cause the courts to impute income to you. And what that really means is just, you know, you're not earning a given amount of money, and the courts can just order that your support be paid on a higher amount. Um, I is it possible for that to happen? Yes, it does, and it does happen often. And I can see in this specific scenario where you quit your job to start a new business venture where it might seem unfair because from the perspective of the payer, it may appear as though your creativity is being stifled, your growth is being stifled, and it's just not the best of feelings, and I get that. However, from the recipient's perspective, there's that the courts look at it as there's a certain value to knowing how they would be able to provide financially for a child that's in their care, whether for part of the time or all of the time. So there is that need for certainty on that part, on their part. There is that need for financial support from a child. And remember, need doesn't mean that they have just meeting the bare minimums, right? If a child is used to a certain quality of life and that's changes because you now no longer pay support at a certain level, well, their needs are not being met in that context. So if when you quit your job to start a business, what the courts expect in the vast majority of cases is that you will have savings set aside to meet your support obligations until your income is able to get to that level where you could continue to pay support at par with your income. We all know that is not always the case. Does that mean that you can never go ahead and start a business just because you're an employee and would suffer a dip in income? No. In some circumstances, it may make sense to a court while you're doing, making the move you're making. Could it be that you're in an industry that is going through a downturn and, stepping away and seizing this opportunity in the short term might, while it might hurt, would eventually benefit the children even more. There's cases where, making this transition mean a short-term, discomfort, but ultimately could lead to even the payer paying more in not only child support, but in the special and extraordinary expenses that are in addition to that, right? Could it be that you might be able to pay more of the children's post-secondary education? I'm just throwing some thoughts out there, but the idea is it is possible for income to be imputed to you, even though it's not intentional. And I think I want to clarify because when people hear intentional underemployment, they're thinking it has to be underemployment as a result of bad faith. That's not necessarily the standard. It's just intentional to the extent that you made a decision to leave a better paying job to start a business that's not thriving yet. That's it. It doesn't have to be done necessarily in bad faith. Now, obviously, if it's done in bad faith, then absolutely income would be imputed to you. But if it's not done in bad faith, then maybe there's room for ensuring that that doesn't happen. If things are a little bit, even though if things are somewhat amicable between you and your ex, then this is something that you can negotiate. Maybe reduce support slightly might be. So what I mean by that is if you were paying support of a couple $1,000s every month based on a certain income, well, rather than just saying $0, maybe see if you can negotiate out paying $1,000 a month for the year or something to allow you time to thrive in this business, seeing how it would ultimately could ultimately lead to the child getting a higher amount of child support later. But what you don't want to do is ignore this issue, because a lot of times I've seen people ignore this, and it's like, well, I'm not making that amount. Why is that being imputed to me, and sort of move on with your life? Well, what would happen is you end up having support accruing. You have all of these arrears that are accruing, and then now you're dealing with an issue of fraud enforcement. The problem with that is they have a lot of enforcement tools at their disposal, and the last thing you want to do is be at some airport overseas and your passport's canceled because you have child support arrears issues to deal with. So that's not a very that's not a place you want to find yourself. So do try to negotiate it, participate in the court process if that's where your matter is, and make sure that you're making the best decision that's financially viable from the children's perspective, not just yours, because at the end of the day, you do have that obligation. So I hope that answers your question. And again, don't think of intentional underemployment just from a perspective of bad faith. Just know that the fact that you made a choice, it's just really looked at from the perspective of a choice that's been made that's now impacting the children financially. So I hope that answers your question, and until next time, it's bye for now.